What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Project Reboot kitchen. Today in the kitchen, we're whipping up a delicious and hearty breakfast favorite, biscuits and gravy. But in true Project Reboot fashion, we're taking a low-carb and gluten-free approach to this dish to bring you something that's even more delicious with none of the guilt. Now, there's nothing quite like a flaky, buttery, fresh-baked biscuit. And it turns out that gluten and carbs are a pretty necessary part of that equation. So instead of going through the culinary gymnastics of trying to produce a low-carb, gluten-free biscuit, we decided to go a different route and make something altogether different, but every bit as delicious, to serve as the carrying mechanism for our decadent scratch-made gravy. Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, we're proud to introduce you to the gloriousness that is the breakfast chaffle. Now, if you've been in the low-carb community for any length of time, you've probably already heard of chaffles. But for the uninitiated, chaffles are made by throwing some shredded cheese and a handful of other ingredients into a waffle iron to produce, well, you guessed it, cheesy waffles, or chaffles for short. Now, depending on what you add to your chaffle batter, chaffles can be savory, sweet, or anything in between. But for our purposes today, we're going to go with a savory breakfast chaffle, which are honestly a great grab-and-go breakfast option in themselves. And we're going to be smothering them in our thick and hearty scratch-made sausage gravy to make this the perfect keto brunch meal. Now, before we get started, if you're new here, we'd love it if you'd subscribe so that we can bring you all sorts of new recipes to help you on your low-carb journey. Now, without further ado, let's do this thing. Now, the chaffles are actually pretty quick and easy to whip up, so we're going to start things off by tackling our scratch-made gravy. It'll take some time, but the results will be more than worth it in the end. An often overlooked part of making gravy is the chicken stock. Well, the perfect scratch-made gravy needs to start with some purpose-made stock. The right stock for this job is flavorful, full-bodied, and packed with collagen and nutrients that give it great flavor and mouthfeel. Now, if you've already got a great stock recipe, or you're planning to use some pre-made stock, go ahead and skip ahead. I'll put the timestamps below. We'll start the stock by preparing our ingredients. To flavor our stock, I've got some carrots, celery, a couple of cloves of garlic, pepper, salt, and some onion. I've also got about a dozen chicken wings here, a mixture of drums and flats. Chicken wings are great for stock like this because they're packed full of joints and connective tissue that will bring a lot of body to our final stock. We'll give all of our veg a couple of rough chops so that they can fit more easily into our Instant Pot. Then, once we've got everything cut down to size, we'll start throwing everything into the Instant Pot. Once all of our stock ingredients are nice and acquainted in the pot, we'll fill our pot with some water and set our Instant Pot for 2 hours on high pressure. After a couple of hours, we've got a delicious looking stock that will serve as the perfect foundation for our amazing breakfast gravy. We'll start by removing all of the chicken pieces from the stock. But wait, don't throw these away or feed them to your dog quite yet. We'll be using them later on to impart just a little more flavor into our gravy. Once you've got all the big pieces out of the way, strain your broth and set it aside for later. Now that we've got our stock ready, it's time to make the rest of our gravy. For this purpose, we'll need our aforementioned chicken parts, a pound of unseasoned ground sausage, a cup and a quarter of our homemade chicken stock, some seasoning. I've made mine out of salt, pepper, cayenne, paprika, and rosemary and sage, some chopped onions and garlic, some butter, and about 4 ounces of cream cheese. We'll start by melting some butter in a medium-sized pot and waiting for it to turn slightly brown, which for me is happening super quickly because I let my pan preheat for a little too long. Anywho, we'll add our chicken pieces into the pot and baste them in butter. We're just going to be using these chicken pieces to help develop some fond at the bottom of the pot that will really help to develop some great flavors in our gravy. This step is totally optional, but it's totally worth doing if you made your stock just for this occasion like me. Once we've got some chicken flavors at the bottom of the pot, we'll remove the chicken from the pot and replace it with the sausage. We'll cook this sausage on high heat and allow it to cook all the way through, all the while imparting some of its delicious pigness onto that ever-growing layer of fond at the bottom of the pot. Once the sausage is cooked through, we'll remove it from the pot and set it aside and use the residual grease from the sausage as well as a little more avocado oil to saute our onions and garlic. Now, the moisture from the onions and garlic should have already started to deglaze the bottom of the pot, but we're going to add about a quarter cup of chicken stock to the mix now to deglaze it the rest of the way. After I'm certain I've gotten all of that fond off of the bottom of the pot, I'll go ahead and add the rest of our chicken stock and bring everything to a boil to make sure that it's nice and incorporated. Then it's time to bring this party over to the blender, where we'll blend everything together to make a rich, flavorful base for our gravy. After we've blended everything to a smooth consistency, we'll pour it back to the pot and reintroduce our sausage to the party. Then we'll add the seasoning and let the bubbling broth distribute those flavors to every corner of the sausage. Finally, we'll add our cream cheese to give this gravy a creamy, velvety consistency that will go perfectly with our breakfast chaffles. Speaking of chaffles, it's time to make those now. Go ahead and turn off the heat and leave the gravy to rest for now while we whip up our chaffles right quick. For this recipe, we'll start by preheating our chaffle iron and gathering our ingredients. We'll need 3 eggs, 2 cups of shredded mozzarella, 3 slices of thick cut bacon, cut down into small pieces, a half a cup of almond flour, a half a tablespoon of baking powder for fluffiness, and a 1/2 tablespoon of psyllium husk to give it a nice gluten-like chew, but without the gluten-like consequences. We'll start by combining all of our dry ingredients into the bowl, starting with the almond flour, then the baking powder, and the psyllium husk. We'll give it a nice mix to make sure that we're evenly distributing that baking powder and psyllium husk. Now it's time to get the wetter, stickier stuff involved. We'll start with the cheese, and then the bacon, and lastly the eggs. Now it's time to mix everything up until we've got something that looks pretty homogeneous. By now, our chaffle iron should be ripping hot and ready to go. We'll spray some of this nonstick spray liberally all around, and then take some heaping 1/3 cup scoops and lay them on the center of the waffle molds. Once we've got all of our molds filled, it's time to let those chaffles feel the crushing weight of the world as they conform themselves into delightful waffle-shaped gravy catchers. Now, I've never trusted my waffle maker to tell me when my waffles are done. Instead, I monitor the amount of steam billowing from the sides of the waffle iron and listen for the amount of sizzling going on. Once the steam has subsided to faint wisps and the sizzling has become pretty much inaudible, I'll take the risk of taking a peek at my chaffles. These look pretty perfect, so there's nothing left to do but gently pry them from the waffle iron and find a plate to display our creation. Next, I'll top this glorious handheld breakfast with some of our delicious gravy. Look at how thick and amazing that looks, and how the wells in the waffles are ensuring that there will be the perfect amount of gravy in each and every bite. Next, we'll top with some chives and enjoy a bite of a dish that even the hottest brunch spots in town can't contend with. Those chaffles are crispy, light, and airy, with a great chew thanks to that psyllium husk. If you got kids, these are great to make ahead of time and pop in the toaster as they're heading out for school. I mean, honestly, forget the kids. Make them for yourself as you're headed out to work. This gravy is thick, creamy, and delicious. There's so much complexity and flavor there thanks to all of the layering that we did with the chicken and the homemade stock. If you're a fan of biscuits and gravy, you've got to try this recipe. If you do try it, or if you're inspired to try your own chaffle recipe after watching this video, don't forget to smash that like button and leave us a comment. We definitely want to hear from you. Until next time, fam.